Hello everybody. Welcome back to our May 2025 production update. We have lots of news for this month. Starting off, let's talk about the tariff situation. If you guys haven't read the blog post about the tariff situation posted back in April, make sure to check that out because that gives more full details, but I'll give a quick recap. The first thing is that as of the current situation, any products that are Canadian made, certified under USMCA rules, are clearing without tariffs. And so because a lot of the majority of the stuff we produced here in Canada, we were able to certify pretty much the majority of products, and anything that we felt were going to be hit with big tariffs, we've blocked from US customers to be able to order. So what that means is primarily for all the t-shirts, because it's funny because the material is made in the US, but then the production is being done in, I think, Honduras or Guatemala or something. Those ones, they get hit by a big tariff. We've just ceased the sales for that to US customers at this moment. And the Makita router, those ones, because they're made in China, those have been paused as well, because if we ship them over, those will be hit with, I think, like 145% tariff. Anything like the AltMill, the LongMill, our accessories, bits, those are all crossing over without tariffs. And so if you order those things, you should be fine. If you want to talk with us and double check, you won't run into any issues, just please let us know. I should note that part of this problem is that with all the clearance that needs to be done. So prior to this, from what I understand, I think it was either $1,200 or $2,500. If the products that are being shipped are under that value, they don't need to go through formal clearance. However, with the changes to the rules, anything above $800 requires formal clearance, which means that a broker will have to look at all the items that are being shipped and then assess whether taxes or duties need to be applied to them, which has caused a huge burden on the shipping system because a lot more shipments have to be cleared through customs formally. They can't just be automated. Companies like DHL has completely stopped shipping any orders to the US above $800 because they're not able to keep up with the customs. We don't use DHL, we use UPS primarily. UPS is handling over 150,000 additional shipments, clearances per day over what they originally have been doing, which means that's put a big burden on the customs side. That's also impacted us because we're finding a lot of issues with the customs, and we've established an automated system that reduces the human error for us to submit the documentation. However, the clearance is primarily done by human, which means that we're finding a lot of human errors happening, which is causing delays in the customs. We're working with UPS to eliminate a lot of them. And because we have a specific UPS team that manages the customs clearance for us, so typically a lot of smaller companies will have, like, the customs will go to whoever free customs broker in UPS would be able to handle it. We have a specific group of people that always deal with our stuff, which means that they're more used to seeing the type of products that we ship. And they're also able to automate some of the processes behind that because they're dealing with it directly. However, if there's issues with the customs, this can lead to two issues. One is the shipment will require more documentation, which we have to provide them, and that can take a couple extra days, or it gets shipped back, which means that it'll reach the border, but it won't be able to cross the border. And so they'll just automatically send it back to us. In the past month, we've received back about 60 shipments, which has put a lot of burden on our team because we need to inspect, repack, and reship those things. And so we're managing a lot of these delays, and it's taking some of the time out from us doing production work. Expecting a lot of this to be resolved as more of the rules get solidified with the US Customs and the shipment companies develop more systems to adapt to this. In the short term, if you're waiting on a shipment from us at the current moment, please be diligent and stay on top of these things and perhaps expect some potential delays if you're an American customer. Starting May 2nd, there's another new change that's expected to happen, which is also going to throw a wrench in the whole customs situation. So I know I just said we're working on and they're kind of adapting to the situation, but once May 2nd happens, the US is changing their de minimis rules, which means that any shipment from China under $800 won't be able to cross duty or tariff free. This means that any shipment coming into the US has to go through formal clearance and will be charged either a $100 flat fee or the cost of the tariff. So for example, if you were to ship something of Chinese origin to the US and it costs $100 and the tariff rate is 145%, then you'd have to pay $145 in taxes to get it cleared, plus the brokerage fee, which I want to say is between $20 to $50. You probably can see that it becomes a lot less practical for someone to buy stuff from China at that point, which I guess is the whole point of the trade war. What this means that although we may not be directly impacted by that specifically, because Canadian products will still be falling under the de minimis rule, which means that if we ship something to the US under $800, they don't need to go through the formal clearance. Because of the extra burden that customs will have to deal with because of the new tariff change, the new clearance change, that may slow down processes for all shipments in totality. Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy time. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable for the shipping companies to handle that, but I'm just sharing that information as part of the production update. Big news. So we've had the 36-inch T-tracks, which I believe have been changed to 34 inches to fit the long mill better. We have now started to sell the 48-inch version, which is designed for the AltMill. So we know a lot of customers who buy the shorter length T-track and then modify them to fit them into the AltMill. We have now switched to 48s. Some customers who have ordered the AltMill, we've proactively changed them to the 48, given that people are probably going to be using it for the AltMill. So you may get a message about that, or you can order them directly from the store. AltMill 2x4 and 4x4 production has been continuing on. We are roughly shipping about 50 units per week, which means the goal for May is to ship 200 units. That will clear batch 4. Batch 5 is now in production and expected to start shipping batch 5 machines in July. We may be able to ship it a little earlier depending on the parts availability, but right now we've sold out on batch 4. Any new machines that get ordered now will likely be shipped in July. Once we get batch 5 is going to be 750 units, and so the goal for that batch is to make more inventory than, basically we don't want to sell out before we reach the end of that batch. And so if we can get to that point, then it means that our lead times is going to be lower, or we can kind of be on par. So we need to ship faster than what we're selling, and we're kind of right now at 200 units. We can ship a little bit faster than that rate. But yeah, we're still working on improving the production speed and decreasing the lead times. That process will still take quite a long time, just because it's a relatively new product and we have to establish a lot of new processes. And also the cash that we need to build all this stuff is a lot too. And so yeah, we're working towards decreasing those lead times. AltMill 4x8, we've slowed down a little bit on that development side. One, to focus more on the 2x4 and 4x4 production. What that means is working on new jigs and new processes to speed up the assembly process. That doesn't mean we haven't made any progress. One of the main things we're working on right now is to continue to test the rack and pinion system for the Y-axis. Because the Y-axis is about 9 or 10 feet long, we're not using ball screws for that part. We're developing another system that we can move back and forth, because primarily if the ball screw moves really fast, they'll whip. And if we want the machine to move at the rate that we move it on the 4x4 by default, the ball screws need to be extremely thick. We're working on a new power transmission system. We've been testing a couple different ones and seeing the accuracy and precision of the movement, and the results are pretty good so far. But we still have long-term testing to do, as well as a couple of different designs to test as well, and also some sizing constraints. Once we've kind of established on the basic mechanics of it, then we'll have to start doing long-term testing. So that might be like a week of just straight back and forth movement to see, are the gears wearing out? Is the motor being able to handle that sort of load, and all of those sort of things as well. We're joking about doing a 300-hour live stream where like people can just watch the machine just go back and forth. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let us know. LongMills are shipping without any delays because we have stock of those machines. There is one notable change that we're experiencing, which is a pretty big jump in the cost for the aluminum rails. The aluminum rails we make in Brampton, Mississauga area, and we've just placed an order for another batch, but the batch cost is 21% higher than the previous batch, which you placed, I think, back in December, so a couple months ago. And that's pretty crazy because, one, even though we're making it in Canada, we're still affected by the trade war. What I suspect is because material manufacturers for aluminum are scaling down their production and like laying people off. That's causing the aluminum prices to increase, and also the demand for aluminum to be made here is increasing. That's also affecting the cost. And so ironically, making the rails in China has been a part of a discussion that we've been having a long time. And the more this happens, the more attractive making them in China it becomes. As of right now, because the cost of the aluminum isn't a huge cost per machine in general, we're going to keep the pricing the same, hope that the price for the aluminum goes down once things kind of settle down. But it is like something that we're looking at with the situation. We mentioned in the last update that we have paused the sales for VFDs and spindles to the Canadian market at the moment so that we can get the right certification. The good news is that we have made a lot of progress in that, primarily in two places. One is that originally we were buying the VFDs from a distributor, and although we talked with them and to discuss whether the VFDs can be certified, but we didn't really get a good answer for that. Daniel and Johan went to China last month, and they just came back, and they were able to find the original manufacturer for the VFDs, and it turns out that those specific VFDs had been certified way back before. And so that's kind of good news, because if it's been certified in the past, chances are it can be recertified in the present. And so we're currently in talks on figuring out what the plan is going to be for that. Everything needs to be recertified because the certification has lapsed. So there's a cost to certify the production factory as well as the units themselves. At least they've gone through that process already. And so, that's one option. And then the second option is to use the SPE 1000 testing standard, which means that rather than certifying the product and the factory, we can have a certification inspector look at each of the products individually and certify whether or not those comply. And those would work in this scenario where we can make maybe a couple hundred VFDs for the Canadian market, and they would come and then they would certify each one individually. In the short term, that's probably our best option, because then basically what we can do is take the components from our original VFD and make them compliant to SPE standard, and then we can obviously ship them to Canadian customers. In the long run, we would want to produce and certify everything in China, where obviously most of the majority of the parts are coming from, and also because of the pricing, because of the expertise there. Yeah, we kind of have two things going on. In the short term, probably in the next month or so, we'll be having units available for Canadian market under that standard. And then in the long term, we'll likely have the fully compliant units coming out of China. So those will all be packaged up. On top of this, going through this whole process has taught us a lot about the VFD design and kind of like the safety and the usability portions of the VFD, because right now we can certify the H100 units on their own as they are, but given that we've designed our own enclosure and our own kind of system for it, now it gives us the opportunity to potentially kind of build it from the ground up and make it more user friendly and safer in general, and then just produce the new version of that rather than going with the old version for everything, if that makes sense. So I'm pretty excited about this. This is going to be, I would say, like a pretty big deal, I think, in the hobby CNC space. It's obviously not the first time a company has done this, but this might be the biggest scale implementation of it. And so potentially we can obviously use it for our machines, but it makes it a lot cheaper and easier for other hobbyists too. Another thing that we've obviously discussed and recognized quite a long time ago is that the 1.5 kilowatt spindle is a little bit underpowered for the AltMill. As I said before, the 1.5 kilowatt works great for the majority of things, but when you need that little extra bit of power for surfacing or taking really deep cuts, having a higher power spindle is obviously going to make that a lot easier. And given how rigid the AltMill is, throwing on a larger spindle, as we've demonstrated in our former videos, doing like a 4.5 kilowatt spindle is totally doable. Initially, we had looked for 3.5 kilowatt spindles to add to the kit. That small change has also brought up some different challenges. So for example, like we need to redesign the dust chute because the form factor of the spindle itself is a lot bigger. And also getting the VFDs to match up with all that stuff is also not very common either. We also been working on figuring out if we want to do water-cooled or air-cooled spindles as well. The water-cooled spindles can perform better because the water can cool better. And then to kind of match the performance, the air-cooled spindles need to be bigger and designed differently. However, having the water loop and the pump and the bucket and having the coolant and all that sort of stuff adds a big headache and a lot of cost to the whole system. And as you guys know, we want to make the systems as simple and easy as possible. So we've been trying to get an air-cooled version as soon as possible. However, the thing about the 2.2 kilowatt spindle is that they're already readily available exactly to the format that we need. Basically, through some debate, it was like, okay, why don't we just order a bunch of 2.2 kilowatt spindles, have that as a stopgap option, and the large majority of people will probably never need to go any bigger than that. But if we have the option, then we don't bottleneck everybody that can switch over. So we have gone ahead and ordered a batch of the 2.2 kilowatt spindles. I think we ordered like 300 or 400 of them. And just to clarify, that's only for the motors themselves. We want to have the safety clearance on the 2.2 kilowatt spindle VFDs if possible. Yeah, so the spindle motors will come probably in the next month or two. And then the VFDs we're working on to have an option. On top of that, we are working on the auto tool change related stuff. We want to have it ready for the launch for the 4x8 because we feel that the bigger the machine is, the more justified the auto tool change stuff is. But obviously, they'll be interchangeable through all the machinery that we have. And we also wanted to get the right performance out of the ATC as well. So I'm expecting that closer to the end of summer for us to be having something ready to launch or announce. Yeah, we got a lot of VFD work, a lot of spindle work, and a lot of the 2.2 and potentially a 3 or 3.5 kilowatt ATC spindle as well. We are getting a lot of people who are ordering the AltMills now because we did talk about these spindles before. Yeah, so if you want to order the machines now and then probably just because our lead time is still pretty long, I think May, June. Yeah, you're probably looking at about 3 months until you'll get your machine. That's pretty much a good time for us to like have those options ready, and then you can choose them if we have them, or obviously you have options to go with aftermarket spindles as well. Speaking of spindles, we also have a lot of progress made on the auto spin T1 router. One of the most common router options for the lower end hobby market is to use the Makita router. We want to develop an alternative to that would give you spindle functionality. And so you can plug into your controller and the router can turn on and off and also control its speed automatically through the PWM signal that is found on the majority of controllers in the hobby market. We have completed the beta testing and we've gotten amazing feedback, and we've also seen great results out of the testing as well. Johan and Daniel in their trip have visited the factory and finished some discussions. We're going through the certification process right now to make sure that they're compliant for US and basically North America and worldwide sales. And then we'll start a production cycle for about 2,000 to 3,000 units. And that's expected to take about 2 months to complete. If everything lines up, the timeline should be around mid to end of summer for those to be shipping as well. However, once we complete the safety inspection and start the production cycle, there's a good chance we'll have a pre-order available. Lastly, G-Control panel computer, that has been selling quite well, actually a lot better than I initially expected. We are expecting for us to run out again, I have to check the numbers, but in the next couple of weeks likely. We have another batch ordered and expected to arrive mid-June. Try to buy them before we run out, and then if we run out, you'll probably be waiting around mid-June for those ones to ship out. But otherwise, the product is the same, and we've made some small tweaks to the software. Yeah, that's going pretty well. I think that's pretty much wraps up everything for May 2025. If you want to read more about the news, check out pictures, read some of the links to all the articles, please check out our blog. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next month. Bye-bye.